All right. Welcome everybody to Meet the Author. We're here with Janine McNally. So glad you could join us. I'm
I'm
going to
glad
start us
to
off
be
with
here.
a word of prayer, and then we're going to hop in with getting to know Janine and then asking questions pertaining to her, pertaining to her book, and just kind of go where the conversation leads us. So let's start with prayer. God, we thank you for this opportunity we get to meet. We thank you for Janine, who really just poured her heart and soul into this book. God, thank you for using her as a vessel to write these chapters. Lord, thank you for inspiring her. Lord, for leading her. Lord, for just using her in a big way to encourage us as Kidmin leaders from across the world to utilize her book in our ministries. Lord, be with her as she is, I believe, currently writing another book, kind of like a part two. Lord, so I pray that you continue to guide her in her path. Lord, encourage her, bring the right people to help guide her. And Lord, obviously, ultimately use your word as the ultimate inspiration. Be with us during this time. And Lord, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Man.
All right. So Janine, if you can kind of start us off, just kind of tell us about you. Maybe your experience even when you were in kids ministry as a youngin to as an adult in kids ministry, and then to the point of your book, and then we can go on with asking you questions.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. I am honestly, truly honored that you took the time to read through and think about my book. And I consider it a real honor. My background, I was a high school teacher in Australia. Taught for 4 years down there, and I knew from the age of 16 I wanted to be in ministry. I felt called to ministry. So after 4 years of teaching, I took a leave of absence and I went from Melbourne to Adelaide to a small Bible college where I spent 3 years studying Greek and the Bible and all things Bible college-ish. And but at the end of that, I wanted to learn Hebrew, which I know is really weird. I was a math teacher, so my brain kind of operates sequentially, and I thought it would be kind of fun to learn how to understand those squiggly Hebrew letters. But nowhere in Australia back then had Hebrew as a class. And my lecturers at that school were graduates of Dallas Seminary, so they recommended I come over to America to go to Dallas and do Hebrew there. So long story short, I came over in 1990. Oh, goodness, I don't even know. See, I had Hannah in 94. We met in 92. So I came over at the end of 90, I think it was 1990. Tells you how old I am. I finished my Master of Theology degree, met my husband along the way. We had 3 kids, and we moved he was from New Jersey. We kind of met by, quote, accident, which is a story in and of itself. And we went from there to Portland, where he finished his degree. And then we went back to Jersey and we planted a church, and we were there for 10 years. And then he's a pastor, senior pastor, phenomenal preacher, best preacher I've ever heard. Which is good because I got stuck listening to him for a long time. We moved then to Pennsylvania, where he pastored a larger church, and then he pretty much stepped out of ministry and we moved to Colorado. And that's when I got into kids ministry. We were there for about 5 years, and we were leading a small group, and the senior pastor visited our group and basically shared that they were looking for a new children's ministry director. Now, you have to understand, I was a high school teacher. Little rugrats, not my thing. No can do. I want to be able to tell them something and then understand it instead of having to repeat it over and over like little kids. And I just knew that night when he said we would like to hire from within, I felt this voice say, "You could do that." And I was like, "I don't want to do that." And I went home that night. I couldn't sleep. I'd had some experience with running VBSs when we church planted. I basically, my husband was the face of the church and I was behind the scenes. So I set up all the administration and all the programs and all this stuff. And so I helped set up the children's ministry, but I didn't teach the kids. And I ran the VBS. And when we went to the bigger church, I did the same thing. So I had a little bit of experience, but I honestly had never officially done any children's ministry. I'd done youth, I'd done women, I'd done church planning, but that was about it. So that next morning, I said to my husband, "Honey, I feel as though I ought to apply for that position." He goes, "What, are you crazy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I honestly, I wasn't looking for a job, didn't want a job, but I just felt like I needed to apply." And yes, I got the position, and I was there full time for 3 years before stepping out due to a rather unhealthy pastoral scenario, which I won't go into. During that time, I learned a lot. I loved my role. I never did sit on the carpet and teach the little guys. My role was, and I told them this at the interview, I'm not going to teach the kids. I'm going to recruit, train, mobilize, and encourage the volunteers. I said, you don't want to pay me to sit on the floor and teach 5-year-olds. You want to pay me to find people and train them to do it. And so I learned a lot, but I also felt that there was a lot missing um, out there in the children's ministry resource world. I learned how crazy busy it is as a children's ministry director. I believe it's probably one of the hardest roles in the church. I don't think the church understands how much a children's director does. I mean, think about it for a second. When I left, I had about 100 kids in the children's ministry, about 60 Sunday, about 40 on Wednesdays. If you think about how many parents that represents, maybe 120 parents that you're also charged with encouraging them. And then I had about 60 to 70 volunteers. Add that up, you've got the size of a church, and we're one person. So I gained through that whole thing an unbelievable passion for reaching children, knowing that that's the age group that they're most receptive. And for you guys that are leading them now, as I've stepped out and I'm just more of a resource provider. So yeah, so that's my background. My book, I was writing this when I knew I was going to be teaching at my seminary. I was prepping my courses, children's ministry classes, and I thought, I'm just going to write a book. That's what everybody does, right? And so I started putting my lessons into chapters. And as I did that, I thought this is going to be really boring. Everybody has already written this book. And so I scrapped the idea and I was continuing to prepare, and I came across a quote from a psychology professor from the University of India, believe it or not. In a footnote of an article that he wrote, he mentioned Generation Alpha. So I Googled it and I thought, who is Generation Alpha? And I thought, oh, they're the ones that we're working with right now. The only book at the time that was out was Generation Alpha by Mark McCrindle. He's an Australian and he's a sociologist. He's also a Christian, but his book was written from a sociology perspective, not a church perspective. So I contacted him and I said, have you done any work on Generation Alpha in the church? And he said, no, we haven't. And I was like, that's what I'm doing right there. So that's when my book got started. I had no idea what I was going to call it. My writing coach said you should always, your title should always be clear and not cryptic. and, and this is very cryptic. When you see fireflies, like, huh? What is that about? That came from my oldest daughter. She said, Mom, you should call that. Remember when we went outside to play when we were living in Pennsylvania and we would say, when do we have to come inside? And you would say to us, when you see the fireflies. The darkness was coming. It's never good to be outside playing in the dark. Time to come inside. And I was like, I can work with that. So that's where it came from. And I am just right now in the process of rebranding my entire ministry to name it Equipping Fireflies based on this, because I feel like that's what we're doing. We are shining bright to attract kids to come in away from the dark world in where it's safe, where the light can save them. And so, yeah, that's the story of my book. I'm actually writing, my next book is going to be with her. She is graduating with her doctorate 1 week before I do. She'll have a doctor of education, mine will be a doctor of ministry. And we're writing one now for parents, questions that primarily probably be moms asking about how to raise their Generation Alpha children. The thing is, Alpha is finishing this year, and I think it's going to be beta starting next if it follows the Greek alphabet at all. So yeah, that's basically where the book came from, and I'm just writing furiously now that my dissertation's finished, and I'm free to do other things. So yeah, hope that quickly explains me and my book. So.
Did you ever think this is where you would be or end up?
Oh no, no. So I was a math teacher. Math people don't like English and writing. I hated it. I barely scraped through at in my 12th grade exam, my English exam. In Australia, education's very different. It scored out of 100. My final exam, everything from 12th grade was on one exam, 3-hour exam. It had 7 books to read for the year. I think I read 3 of them somewhat. I didn't even read them all. And I got, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, I think I got 58 out of 100. So I scraped through with English. I hated writing. And I learned to write when I taught my kids how to write. I homeschooled. That's why I'm so late getting my doctorate. I spent the last 25 years homeschooling our kids, and they were my priority. So our youngest was done with homeschooling a couple of years ago, and that's when I said, all right, time for me to do what I want to do now with my doctorate, and that's where it went. So that's where I learned to write. And yes, I would never have imagined that I would be writing a book. I actually said to my husband probably 10 years ago, I don't understand why people write books anymore, because everything's been written already, you know? But not everything has been written. So yeah, so thank you guys for plowing your way through my book.
Well, I love to read and I enjoyed reading your book. I actually kind of liked your short chapter approach. Like I
Mhm.
liked the short, quick, like although they were short, you put your information in and you put it in well, without being too redundant or not enough information.
Yeah,
So you did
when I
well with
started
that.
it, it was, I think it had 10 chapters. And I spoke with somebody and they said people like short chapters. So I went back and reworked it all and shortened the chapters so that, I mean, I'm thinking, children's directors don't have an hour to read a chapter, but they could do it in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
So short ones, yeah.
yeah, that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my question for you would be, and this is what my focus is for this year,
Yeah.
especially with Gen Alpha and potentially Gen Beta, if that's what they go with. Absolute truth.
Oh,
Obviously that's a big thing. And that's our focus for this year is focusing on truth, absolute truth, God's word, and that's our light that's going to guide our path. What are your thoughts on, the best way to approach it with our kids and with I think you mentioned this in your book with kids, like, isn't it by 8 years old, they decide, whether God is real or not.
well,
So
yeah, that's
what are
when
your
they're
thoughts on that?
Yeah. So it's funny because my dissertation, my advisor said I had a plan worked out for what I wanted to do. It was going to be talking about more about family ministry, and he said, "Let me see if I can change your mind. You just finished writing a book. Why don't you use your book as the foundation for your dissertation?" And I was like, "You'd let me do that?" I'm thinking, this is great. I'm halfway there. And I started writing it, and it just kept going further and further and further to the point where it was very much involved in absolute truth, relativism, humanism, human secularism, all that stuff. And it that's a huge thing. I mean, if kids don't believe in truth, then the Bible means nothing. And that's what they're being taught in their schools, secular humanism and relativism. There is no such thing as right and wrong, black and white. It depends on what you think. So that's in my um, dissertation. That was one of my chapters. That's where we have to begin. to reestablish absolute truth. I'm trying to remember, it was a while ago when I did this. Did I actually talk about relativism and absolute truth in this? I've been writing so much that I'm
I
not
know we
sure.
talked about it at some point because I remember even saying in one of our videos, I'm like, it still blows my mind that people will not believe that the Bible, they won't believe the contents of the Bible, despite the fact the Bible is a historical document that has lasted that has lasted time, for 2,000 years, an actual historical doc. And I remember saying that, they'll believe a TikTok at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, I
But
know.
yet, a literal Bible, whether you want to look at the Septuagint or the Torah or, the literal historical artifacts, oh, that's questionable. Like that it just boggles my mind.
Uh, I really think we need to go back to just basic apologetics. I remember reading something about the way to establish truth for, I think I might have used this in my book about, for example, the death penalty. I don't believe in the death penalty. I think it's wrong. And then somebody kills your child. All of a sudden now you want the death penalty for the person who killed your child. So there is a limit to everybody's relativism. And if you press them into a corner where they are forced to think about that, for example, in that scenario, they will say, you know what, you're right. There is a right and wrong. And it might have been an Answers in Genesis thing that I read, that it talked about pressing them into a corner about what is right and wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with the divorce. Well, what about if your parents divorced? Or what about if somebody had an affair with your husband? Or what about, and pressing the scenario into something that's real life and personal and brings it home to them till it gets to the point where they say, oh yeah, maybe. Because it's kind of like people saying I'm an atheist. I don't honestly think that there are very many atheists. I think most people who say they are more agnostic, because it takes more faith to believe there isn't a God than to say there is one. So you press them into a corner. With kids, I think you just have to begin right there at the beginning, like what you said about how do we know the Bible is true? How do we know that we can trust the Bible, and go back to the fact that it was written over 400 years of time, and there's no contradictions, and 60 different authors, and going back to those. I remember studying them. Josh McDowell. I've got a whole bunch. I'm actually just right now I've just finished writing a couple of books for kids, understanding baptism, understanding salvation. And this morning I started understanding the Bible, and it's going to be going back to why do we believe the Bible? Why? How do we know it's trustworthy? How? And beginning there, because without that foundation, you know, we're not going to be able to build on it. The hard part for me, what I don't understand, and I was reading about, it might have been in Flip the Script or something, is we can't assume anything with these kids that come for the first time. We can't assume that they believe in God. We can't assume that they believe the Bible. Whereas decades ago, there was a basic level of understanding, a Christian belief in our world, and that's gone. So what do you do? I think the thing I was reading says you can't assume, you got to have a new starting point. Almost they were saying is you got to go back to the beginning every single time someone new comes. I don't know how you can do that. How do you teach, how do you move forward if you have to always be going back to the beginning? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges now is yeah, how do you progress? How do you, when you've got kids there that don't believe the basics, the foundations? So yeah, Jody, I think you should write a book on it. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's tough.
Do you have any resource ideas for apologetics that we could use like in the classroom at church?
Oh gosh, I have some projects that I want to do, and one of them I actually started the other day is and I'm not sure if it's going to be a literal one page. I would like to create a one-page cheat sheet for teachers on all the tough topics, abortion, gender identity, and so that you can print them off and hand them to your teachers and say if something, and have the Bible verses and the principles there, so that if the topic comes up, they can look at it and find, you know, have some sort of grounding. The only ones I actually bought, these ones, I just got these in the mail the other day. Someone mentioned them on Facebook. I haven't looked at them yet. I was going to
Is
use
that the one by what's his name? He's a news reporter, investigator guy.
uh, who are they? J. Warner Wallace.
Oh no, that's not who I'm thinking of.
And then these ones,
Yeah, Lee Strobel.
Lee Strobel. Yeah. Um, they seem, both of them seem very story oriented.
Yeah, that's not really, so that's like a story that maybe they would read or even us, but not like a curriculum type thing, right?
Right. Yeah. And for me, I'm not a story writer so much as I'm more of a workbook kind of person. Work through these, read this verse. What do you think about this? What does God say about that? And the facts sort of stuff. These books, what are they about? 140 pages long, and
Mhm.
Lee Strobel's are even longer. Got a lot of footnotes and stuff, but I I don't know what is best for kids. Whether a 45-page book which is fact filled is better than 140 pages of story. I just don't see kids reading stories much anymore.
And Lee Strobel's is more for an upper elementary kiddo too versus younger. Like that's more of a, I mean, I think fourth grade's even pushing it. That's more of like a fifth and sixth grader than it is, much younger than that.
Also juvenile nonfiction, but I guess for for me, my biggest passion right now are preteens. So we have been told for quite a while that kids are leaving the church when they go to college. Um, I don't agree with that anymore. As I was studying for my dissertation and stuff, the statistics show that they don't attend any longer when they go to college, but they're actually leaving sooner, more like high school age, because parents are very concerned about not losing their kids, and the kids want to play baseball and soccer and stuff, so they let them leave sooner. And even before that, they're starting to ask questions. So during fourth and fifth grade, especially, they're starting to ask those questions. Why? Because they're coming up against the issues in school sooner. And I don't think the church is doing a good job answering their questions. So gender issues and stuff. And why aren't we answering their questions? I'm going to guess either we feel like it's not our place. I heard somebody from the discussion a couple of weeks back said, I don't feel that it's my place to talk about pornography, for example. I remember somebody from you guys saying something like that. And somebody else said, yes, but they're being confronted by it. I would couch everything with age appropriate. So, and I think the parents want our help. I don't think parents know what to say. And I don't think our volunteers know what to say. So as directors, I feel like we are the ones that need to equip them. That's why I was thinking what might be helpful is these one-page cheat sheets. And even if it's a hairy topic like gender, have a class after church on a Sunday, have them have pizza together and invite the parents to come and address issues, one at a time, every other month or something. Have a forum on gender identity, dress it up to make it a little more kid friendly, and do it in an age appropriate way. Obviously, if I was going to talk about pornography, I wouldn't talk about it graphically. I would say, you know what, guys, you guys are on the internet all the time. And there'll be times when you search on Google and there might be things that come up in pictures that you're like, oh my goodness, that's just not right for me to see. What do you do when that happens? And we can talk about it without bringing a whole bunch of graphic details into it, and teach them how do we first of all know right from wrong, and how do we redirect away from the wrong rather than feeding into it. And yeah, it's, to me, if it's a hairy topic, I would I wouldn't just get the parents' permission, I would invite them in for the conversation, because we want to teach the parents and engage the parents rather than them giving us all the responsibility and abdicating their role. We want to involve them. So that's why I wrote, I called them at the time milestone celebrations. I'm now changing them to stepping stones, and I'm in the process of getting them all up and running. I accidentally deleted my entire store off my website last week, and I've spent the whole week putting it all back up again. And the milestones aren't there yet, but things like child parent dedication, when they get their first Bible. We used to give the first graders, when they graduated into first grade, their first Bible at church. We just handed them out. Didn't even occur to me to make something of that event. Salvation, baptism, communion, and when they graduate out of children's ministry, I created classes or packages where, let's say you've got kids interested in baptism. We invite them to come next Sunday after church. Bring your parents, pizza will be served, and we take them through a class with the parents there. And we talk first of all about salvation and then baptism. And the parents are given a discussion guide and they lead the group. So they're teaching their kids, and they're sitting in and they're learning all of the information, and doing that every single time, bringing those, because for me, when I was in the director, the hardest thing for me was to get the parents engaged. Those take-home sheets, they would be all over the hallway and in the trash cans. I
They
doubt
still
that,
are.
yeah, doubt that they ever read the emails I sent out. Barely, they would read their text messages, but I was like, how do we engage the parents in this stuff? And I'm like, these are special celebrations where parents, we had my brother-in-law is very agnostic, very anti-Christian, but when our daughter, she was 8, I think, wanted to be baptized, he showed up at church for the baptism just because it was her. He never stepped foot in the church for any other reason. So, oh my goodness, what an opportunity to create special events like that, where we can not only teach the parents but also use it to invite family members and friends who don't know the Lord. So yeah, that's was my biggest challenge. Was, I'm not even sure what the question was. Those apologetics. Was,
I
yeah,
remember that conversation, and I think it's how we read it, as we as leaders were charged with talking about it. But if your approach is suggesting that, like, it's more of, we're, discipling parents or as like family units, I think that's a better approach, because the way I grew up, it was like, it wasn't even talked about, and that's almost more dangerous, because then once you are exposed to it, you don't know what to do with it, and then a lot of kids fall into sin because, is this safe, is this not, what is this, and then, they don't feel comfortable talking to their parents about it. So I think giving, parents those tools in their belt to have those safe, comfortable conversations is really good. I know there's a couple resources I have in my Amazon cart. There's a book called like Safe Pictures, Bad Pictures, and there's a couple others. I'm actually working on a parent class on internet safety and whatnot in February, hopefully, if I get it all prepped. But there's a couple really good Christian resources out there for stuff like that. But I think the way we read it was, we thought your point was, have a talk about pornography at church on Sunday morning. And I was like, no, definitely
no,
not.
no.
But
See, that
now
would
that
have
you
been
explained it,
I would have,
yeah.
I'll put that in my second edition. I'll clarify it. No, I would never broach those kinds of subjects without parent permission, and even preferably, like I said, having them present at the time, and having it more of a discussion based where the parents are there. But it's the conversation has to start somewhere. And I don't think it's happening at home because I think the kids don't want to ask their parents. So maybe that's the church is the best place to do that in conjunction with the parents and at an age appropriate level.
Well, and I mean, I even had a parent reach out to me today. Like, for example, she's like, "Do you have anything uh you would suggest to talk about puberty with my daughter?" She's like, "I Googled it and oh my gosh, there's so much out there. I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to go with." And like it's good to have like things like that. It's good to have, stuff like that in our belts to help
Yeah.
to help them because
Yeah.
you want to give them a good solid resource so that they're showing their kids good solid faith-based things too because
Yeah.
you can one thing I told her is stay away from American Girl because American Girl has gone very woke in their puberty adolescent books and
Used
whatnot. And
Great. It used to be
it
great, but
did. I used the American Girl book when I was a kid, but now I would never show that to my
right.
daughter. But it
And
never
the
gets
hard thing is deciding, is this one going to be good or is it not? I'm even what did I do with my youngest? Pathway to Purity? Is that what it was called? It's a um big company that did it. And now that's being criticized because it's too restrictive to expect your children to grow up and not have sex before marriage. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's the standard in my book. Um, it's hard because there's so many different degrees of not maybe wokeism, but from conservative to liberal, which one do you pick? It's tough. And when I was full time in kids director position, I didn't have time to produce anything. That's why now my passion is to listen to you guys say, what do you need? What do you want? Because I have time to produce and to write things like that. And that's my dream is to provide people in the trenches with those kinds of things that they can use. Um, so yeah, tough. Must have some more questions. Come on.
I don't have my book. It's killing me.
Oh,
So can you hear me now?
But
No?
there's gonna be too many.
You can?
Yeah.
So, all the cases, that same case is on the phone too.
So Janine, my question would be like, you gave a lot of research in your book.
Mm.
So where can we find some of that research? I know that like Barna has stuff, but it's reports that we have to either kind of subscribe to or get to.
yeah.
Sometimes you need the statistics and you need that for, presentations or whatever, but where's the best place you found some of your statistics in your research?
Probably. Well, if you looked at the end notes,
Yep, which I
there's
love.
there's a ridiculous amount of them. Um, uh, where did I get my research? Probably. I mean, I purchased a bunch of books. Barna is still probably in my mind the top research company. I know that McCrindle is trying to do a similar thing in Australia, but again, a lot of his research is Australian. I'm sure Australian kids are very similar to American, but as soon as you put it into a different culture, there's question marks about whether it's the same or not. Yeah, I just bought. I love eBay. I buy everything used. All my books used. They're a fraction of the price. Because I'm not my husband's retired. I don't work other than teaching, and you don't get much for teaching. So we're on a pretty limited budget. But yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. I just a lot of with Alpha. When I wrote this book, there was hardly anything written.
Mm-hmm.
McCrindle's was the only book out. Now there may, if you Google Generation Alpha, there may be a few extras, but mostly it was articles, and you can get them for free usually.
Mhm.
People have started writing articles and then they turn them into books. But
What is your hope with your next book?
the one with my daughter, she's her twin boys are turning 1 this month, and she's pregnant with another one, and
Oh.
she's in a, yeah, uh, they wanted to get them done nice and close, over and done with, and I'm like, oh boy. She's, and one of the boys is very rammy, and they're both just started, well, they're both crawling now, and oh my goodness, crazy. But she's in a lot of mom groups, a lot of non-Christian moms, and so she is seeing questions and concerns and criticisms of so many different things, that she was like, we got to write something that addresses those questions, like spanking, how do you discipline your child, how do you control a strong-willed child, going back to the basics, and having to say it in a way that you can avoid the accusation that you're just too conservative and you don't know what it's really like. So what we're going to do is she's going to pose questions that either she has as a mom raising children or that she's heard. I'm answering it from a biblical perspective, and then she's going to respond to the answer, and they're going to be short chapters, like one question per chapter kind of a deal. So we're in the process of mapping that out. She's still plugging away on her dissertation. She's not, I finished mine early. So we'll probably start really working on that this summer, but that's the next one. So, and then I would love to do something on kind of like what you were saying, Jody, about establishing biblical truth and versus relativism, and intergenerational ministry versus age segregation. That's a hot topic right now, and basically family ministry. That would be probably my next dream, would be doing that. I don't know. My brain goes,
Let me
"Oh,
know if you want to collaborate. My prayerful goal this summer is to work on like a midweek curriculum on truths for kids.
right."
We'll see what happens, but
Somebody else is trying to get my ear to do a 1-year curriculum, and I'm like, oh my gosh. You can't, curriculums are tough because there's no way you can compete with Awana and Lifeway and Group and all those big organizations. You can write phenomenal material and no one buys it.
yeah.
Give it away for free. And that, I mean, I wrote a VBS about 6 months ago. I'd been asked by a bunch of people, we need a good VBS, one that's really clear on the gospel. So I sat down and probably spent 3 or 4 weeks solid, 8 hours a day, working out a curriculum. And it has every element in it that the big companies have got, the director's book, leader's guide, games, crafts, snacks, every missions, every different aspect of it. I got videos from a company and songs from Jumpstart 3, and put it all together, and it's solid material, and I can't even give it away because nobody knows who I am. So it's like you've got to pick and choose, what can I create that's not out there right now? And it's hard with curriculum. The curriculum companies are struggling too. So I don't know. That's why I'm like, what do you guys need? What is your number one need? What do you think the market doesn't have that we need to have more of? To me, that's my question to you guys.
I think
So
where
can you,
we're headed, that I can't find stuff for it, which is great because I get to help, develop it for our own people. But kind of we're calling them party with the parents, but they're like one-off discipleship events. That it's not a drop-off for the kids, it's not, but what can the parents do together as a family? And then they leave with a tool that then gives them a springboard for discipleship at home.
Right.
know.
So this is something I just created this. It's 4-week study for kids. It covers salvation, assurance, baptism, and discipleship. And it was modeled, I did it all full color because I asked people online, what would you do, color or black and white? They said full color, so I did full color. It's modeled off, do you guys know Carl Bastian, Kidology?
Mhm.
So he has, I think his is a 10-week class, and 12, I think it's 12, which I thought was too long, so that's why I did 4. And he brings the parents and the kids together. They have round tables, the parents are with their kids, and he leads the families through these topics. And he has these topics plus 8 more. And that's my goal, is to create resources like that where it's not a drop-off event. The parents come and they work on something together. They don't have to feel like they're the expert because we're up front teaching it, but then they lead the discussion with their kids. They help them with the puzzles or writing the answers out to the questions and stuff like that. I'm done with creating resources just for kids. I want to create resources for families
Thank
to
you.
teach parents how to disciple their kids.
Thank
And
you.
that's my heartbeat. The question I have is how do I find out whether this is scratching the itch if no one buys them? I can
Can we get the link to that?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
Steps to knowing Jesus. So there's I just finished making, there's one for kids and one for preteens. They're basically the same, except the preteen book has older kid pictures and the journal at the back is different. So the kid one is for like ages 6 through 9. So they draw a picture about what they learned and their Bible reading is shorter. And the preteen one has got, they write what they learned and their reading is a little bit bigger. And then the leader's guide is more expensive only because it's got a download section where you download all of the resources that enable you to teach the class. So you can use the same books at the same time. So you can have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old and just have the 10-year-old has the preteen book, the 6-year-old has the kid book, basically the same except for the pictures and the journal at the back. And they just make their way through it with the leader teaching them. So yeah, I don't know, I create them, and if I'm leaving the rest up to God, if he chooses to use it, it's, I publicize where I can. And yeah, so
Anything that we can get, any kind of resources, again, that just kind of helps us to extend what we're doing and leading the parents when they go home. That's wonderful. And thank you for doing that.
Now, one of the things I was about to start before I resigned my position was my dream was every month, but it probably wouldn't have worked in reality. But on a Saturday night or a Friday night, have the families come to the church, feed the kids and have something for them, and have the parents in a room for 30 minutes with, coffee and a snack or something, and have a speaker come in from the church or an experienced parent or something, and they talk about a topic. That was one idea. And then the other one was to have the whole family together on a round table and have a devotional, like a practice devotional thing. So, all right, what I want you to do is I want you all to turn to this verse in the Bible. This is what we're going to do, and teach the parents how to lead their kids through something that they can do at home. Because if you don't get the parents connected, kids can get saved and they can survive the teenage years on their own, but it's a lot more successful if you've got parents involved. And yeah, I mean, my family growing up, my goodness, my mom and dad divorced. My dad was abusive. He claimed to be a Christian. Don't know if he was. He would get up. We grew up in the Open Brethren denomination, which is here in America, but it's very small. And we had open worship. So men would get up and pray or lead us, suggest a song or something. He would get up and he would do that on a Sunday, and he'd come home and beat us. And there'd be no evidence of anything at home. And it was horrific. And out of the five of us, all five of us are still walking with the Lord. Four of us are in Christian ministry. Three are pastors. It's ridiculous how we survived that. To me, that's a miracle. Someone was praying for our family. But how much better if you've got parents who are Christians and who are walking with the Lord beside their kids as they grow up. So yeah, engaging the parents and gosh, you'll probably hear my passion in my voice. You guys don't have time to do that. That's what kills me. You're so busy leading the kids, and how are you supposed to do family ministry as well? We had on our staff, we had a guy who was hired as youth and family, and he was told, don't worry about the family part, just do the youth right now. And I'm like, no, we need family ministry. And in the year that he was there before he quit, there was nothing done with family ministry, and it's just not a priority. You guys are in the basement. You're having to ask for donations for Easter candy and fall festival. It's like, I said to someone, I've never seen men ask for donation for eggs for their men's breakfast, but we have to ask for donations for candy. Why? I mean, why isn't the budget for children's ministry enough to do a good job? Drives me crazy. It's just, it's just,
Preach.
oh yeah. Oh my gosh. It's like, if that 414 window, all the money is going to everybody, all the adults who have already made up their minds. We've got this short period of time to get these kids, and the priority is lowest on the totem pole. At least that's how it was in my church. So when I found out how much I was being paid in comparison with the men on the staff, wow, it was an insult. And I wasn't doing it for money, but when I saw that, I was like, that hurt. That was hard. So
Especially as
Consistent.
you said at the beginning, how much we do. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah,
it's
I salute you, because you guys are unbelievable. You may never see it here on this earth, but you guys are on the front lines doing the most effective ministry I think anybody can ever do. So take heart, keep going, don't give up.
This isn't necessarily a question, but I'm just so thankful that you were like coming from a children's ministry background. You can see that throughout your book. And the fact that you validated what we do, you understand what we do, it just made this book even more applicable, because we knew that you understood the ministry that you were writing about. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Honestly, growing up, my heart was youth ministry because I was a high school teacher. Then we're in church planting, and my husband has a preaching and an evangelistic gift. So then my heart went to evangelism and sharing the gospel, and then it went to women's ministry, and I end up with kids ministry. And now it's like that's all I can think about is reaching children during that time period, and it's focusing even more on that preteen age group where they're asking these questions, and they may still be sitting in the pews on Sunday or in our classrooms, but if we don't answer their questions, they're already gone. They've already decided that this is not for me. You probably read about cognitive pruning. They get to that age, and I cognitive prune all the time because my brain is shrinking. I can't keep everything in there. So I'm like, oh, I don't need to know that person's name. I don't chop, 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 but they're chopping things all the time. And we don't want them chopping God out of their lives. And that's the time period where they're deciding all that. And it's like your preteen teachers, it's just so critical, that age group right now. And yeah, I would have, before my 3 years in children's ministry, I would have said, oh, yes, church planting, evangelism, they're really important, and they are. But children's ministry, that's 4 through 4, barn, what is it, 60 to 70% get saved between 4 and 14? Need we say any more? Seriously, and yet we give all the budget to the old people.
I think it's amazing how you got all of this in a matter of a couple of years. You know, you know what I mean? And then you wrote about it. You're like, oh my God, this is so important that I need to write about it.
Yeah. Something
and
happened in those 3 years with me. Something I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Will we see you at the Kids Matter conference? Will you be going there this year?
I hope so. I hope so. I put in my breakout applications. I spoke the last one. Yeah, that was crazy. My room had, I think, 25 chairs, and they were full 45 minutes before we started. There
Yeah.
were people standing, sitting, hanging from the ceiling. It was crazy. I
When it-
taught at the CPC in Orlando at
Mhm.
the Engage certification
Yeah.
with Bethel Seminary. That was really fun. And I'm going to be at the 456 conference this month, a couple of weeks in Houston.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Is anybody else going to CPC or not CPC? KMC Kids Matter Conference? Anyone else going yet? Buy their tickets? Awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping to. I'd like to get on a group rate, but I haven't got there yet.
Okay.
Well, it's $99 right now. You won't see it cheaper. That's
That's the group rate, right?
Mhm.
no, it's not. I don't think. Is it?
It's the group
Yes.
rate.
Yeah.
You have to have at least 5 to get it for $99.
Oh, I thought it was everybody.
And
Yeah.
I
No.
don't have 5 yet, so that's
What
mine.
I heard is that the location's a fair way from the airport. We will probably drive there, but
That's what we're doing too. Yeah.
yeah, we take
Shannon, are
our
you gonna make it or no?
I don't know yet. It's either between that or I've been wanting to go to CPC for like years.
Okay.
So I need to like decide within the next couple months to put it like in my budget. I've been told like go to conferences, do what you want to do, but like I got to put a new budget out in a couple months and I got just need to put it in there. So but I
yeah.
probably
Couldn't you go to the Kids Matter Conference this year and then CPC January of next year?
our
Yes.
church does budgets June to June. They
Oh,
would both be in
okay.
the same
Gotcha.
year.
You know what
Okay.
you can
Yeah.
do? This is what I do with CPC is I volunteer.
Yeah.
So volunteers paid, I think it was 169 for the conference instead of the 369. You get free accommodation, free meals. You get a free digital kit afterwards to hear everything.
Wow.
And it's fun.
I might have to look into that.
Yeah, last
Free
year was my
accommodations as in like you stay at the hotel for free? Oh, snap.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Nicest room I've ever stayed in my life. And this year my roommate didn't show, so I had the room all to myself.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And all the meals are catered by Disney. It's not just
They're
here's a
fantastic.
like a buffet. It's unbelievable.
I went as a vendor last year and I have a gluten allergy and I was so afraid I wouldn't eat anything. I cried at every meal because it was so good.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Disney's amazing.
Yep. No. And I loved that conference. I've done Kids Matter 3 times, I think, and CPC. I just finished the second one, and there's something about CPC, and I can't put my finger on it, but I loved it. It's different, same but different.
Yeah, I think that one is closer to me too.
Where are you at?
South Carolina.
Yeah, probably. It's Orlando. And everybody does the Disney Springs and all that sort of stuff in between.
I've never been to Disney.
Really?
Wow.
You want to save up for that one. That's expensive. I wouldn't waste my time. I'd go to SeaWorld any day over Disney. So much less crowds, big rides still, really fun.
She's the best. Absolute best.
All right, well, we've got to wrap up.
Thank you
see,
guys
Janine,
so
it's a
much.
great conversation. See, we made it the whole hour. It was good.
Thank you so much for reading my book. I really am honored that you did that. And if you're not a friend on Facebook, friend request me and we can stay in touch that way. And I can, if you let me know, if you direct message me, I'll look and see if there's a way I can send you the digital copy of this and you can look at it and see if it's something you might think it would be worth using. I am not out to make money. My resources on my website are all digital, and if people can't afford them, I'm like, just contact me and you can have them for nothing. I'm just my heartbeat is ministry and helping you guys do what I can because I know your budgets are really tight. So
And also keep us in mind too with your next book. If you ever, once you're getting close to the end, if you need feedback or whatnot, have thoughts, questions, we'd love to be your sounding board.
sure.
Because as Stacy said, we enjoyed reading your book. It was really good. It was great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Would you mind, Janine, closing us in prayer today?
Sure, will do. Father, thanks so much for the time we've had together. I want to thank you for these ladies who have given their hearts to reaching your children. And I ask that you would strengthen them as they go through all of the scenarios of pain and tiredness and feeling overwhelmed and questions, and then the joys of seeing children come to know you as well. I just ask that you would raise them up, and if they don't see that reward here, just encourage them knowing that they will see it in heaven. And I just thank you for them and pray that you would bless them and be to them everything that they need in this life and with their families. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, thanks
Thank
again,
you so
Janine.
much.
You
Yes,
betcha. Thanks, guys. Have a
this was
great
fun
day.
time. You as well. I hope you feel better.
Oh, thank you. Yes, my throat is I'm losing my voice.
We'll go
Thank
get
you.
some rest, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
You betcha. Thanks,
All right,
Jody.
have a great weekend, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.